It's the last one! It's not the last one, it's the last one that I'm in. Who cares? Like, that's not even that big of a deal.
We care.
Okay, here we go. Hey, y'all. As you can tell, I look a little different. So what had happened was, you guys know I'm moving, and I just had to like get my hair up in a way that I didn't have to deal with it. So I braided it myself. It took me 12 hours. I do not recommend, unless you're on a budget, because it was very cheap. But do you like it? I don't even know how to do that.
Like this.
Oh, like that, okay.
Yeah.
Such an accomplishment.
Let me try this one, because I feel like I don't flick with this arm. Like,
Yeah, like
there we go. Okay. All right, okay. Now let's talk about anxiety, okay? Welcome to Health Talk. Welcome back, you guys. Today we're going to be talking about anxiety. All of the topics are important, but by far I think that you guys deal with this the most. Most scholars have experienced anxiety in some shape or form. Also, you guys have the most questions about anxiety. So we have a lot to get through, and I'm going to try my best to be as concise as possible. Let's get it started. Why do you have so much money? What is happening? Okay, anxiety is a natural physical reaction to perceived danger. So essentially, anxiety is when your heart beats really fast, you start sweating, you literally feel like you're going to die. There's like anxiety attacks where it gets like you really feel like you're about to die, and then there's just like anxiety in general where it's like worrying and being anxious about certain situations. You cannot get rid of anxiety. That is an emotion, that is a feeling, and you need it in order to be successful. Honestly, if you're not anxious about something, you're not gonna do well. If you don't care about a test and you're not worried about it, you might fail. If you're a little anxious, that's gonna help your brain, that's gonna help your body get into like game mode. Anyone can experience anxiety. Babies can experience anxiety, animals can experience anxiety. It is a mechanism, again, that is just wired in us in order to survive. Anyone can get anxiety, and it can be triggered by a bunch of different things. Stress, school, parents, siblings, your environment, if you feel unsafe, past traumatic events like abuse, it can, or really nothing. Sometimes just, actually I shouldn't say nothing. Like getting on stage can make somebody anxious. Being around your crush can make somebody anxious. There's normal things that happen every day that we shouldn't have like a natural physical reaction to if we're thinking logically, but anxiety still happens. But for me, what it was like, I would go to bed and I would sit in my bed and I would think of like all these crazy things that could happen. I would be worried that a nuclear bomb was going to bomb us while I was asleep, and I would get up and go talk to my parents and be like, what if this thing would happen? And my parents are like not anxious, so they're like, no, that's not gonna happen, go back to bed. But then my mind would not stop. I would think about one thing and it would just lead to another thing. What if the world is gonna end? I'm not gonna survive till I'm 16. Like all these crazy things, and it was just my mind going. And that can be anxiety. I didn't necessarily feel like I was dying, but I felt like I was going to die very soon. And I think that's very common with scholars, is worrying to the point where it's almost irrational. Like that wouldn't make sense. I wasn't about to get bombed. My parents weren't about to die driving off a bridge, but for some reason my mind went there. Anxiety is extremely common, especially among people who are from 13 up. One thing about anxiety is that it becomes more common as you get to college, and people experience it more because there's more pressure, there's more stress, and there's less support, and people don't know how to cope with the stress. Another thing that is really interesting, and I wish somebody had told me when I was in middle school, is that like I was anxious as a child, but it wasn't to the point where I got anxiety attacks. It wasn't until college that I got anxiety attacks. That is very common. So if you are someone who deals with anxiety on the lowest key, like it's not that big of a deal, please seek help now. Please try to figure out with coping mechanisms, how can you get through stress? Because what often happens is in college, people start to get more serious mental health disorders and issues. So people start to get bipolar disorder, they start to get OCD. I don't know exactly why it happens, schizophrenia. I don't know why exactly it happens in college. It's a lot of different things going on with our brains at that point. But my main thing is get help now. so that you can be successful later. So there can be physical things that if you're constantly anxious, they might start happening to you. For example, biting your nails is kind of a sign that someone might be feeling anxiety. Having your hair fall out is also, really stress, but stress and anxiety are usually tied together, so that can also be a sign that somebody's experiencing anxiety. So what I like to do when I feel anxious is I like to chill, close my eyes, and literally just focus on my breath. Like any thoughts that pop into my head that might make me really anxious, I let them go. The main key is to, when there are anxious thoughts popping into your head, acknowledge them, let them go. Do not focus on any worrisome thoughts, because the more you think about it, the bigger of a problem they get, the more anxious you're gonna become. If you're in a situation that makes you anxious, it's really important to get out of that situation or do something to make yourself feel better in that situation. So it may be counting your breath, focusing on your breath. If you can't get out of it, if you can, leave the room or leave the house and take a walk for a second to calm down. That's also a good idea when you're feeling anxious. You can also write in a journal or talk to someone about it. If you can't talk to a therapist, you can talk to a friend, you can talk to a family member, you can talk to the counselor at school. If you can find someone you trust to calm you down, then anxiety won't be as much of an issue for you. So anxiety as a whole, no, you cannot get rid of it. Anxiety attacks, yes, you can absolutely get rid of them. I haven't had an anxiety attack since at least a couple years, and it's because I've been able to really talk myself through when I start to get those feelings. Remember, anxiety is ancient, hardwired in us, but you gotta use your brain, you gotta use logic, you gotta use your breath to get through it, okay? We're smarter than anxiety attacks. Can you die from anxiety? No. Can anxiety make you hurt yourself? Yes. So I don't think anxiety itself can kill you, but I think anxiety could lead to actions of self-harm, which could potentially, you could die. That's why it's so important to get help when it comes to anxiety. That's why it's so important to try to work through it. So I don't know if I like the word insanity, because I feel like there's a stigma, when somebody says someone's insane, people will sometimes use that as a joke or to hurt someone's feelings. And there are people who actually struggle with mental illness. I do think anxiety is connected to depression, and anxiety can be connected to suicidal ideation, which means ideas of being suicidal. Anxiety is not the only type of mental health disorder that someone can have. I do think that all of those things are connected, and people who struggle with anxiety, struggle with OCD, struggle with bipolar disorder are at a greater risk to not be able to function in society because of their disorder if they don't get help, and then also to hurt themselves or hurt other people if they don't get help with their disorder. So I do think it's a serious thing that people need to seek help if it's something that is affecting them.
It's obsessive compulsive disorder, which means it's
Something that you're really obsessed with?
basically obsessive behavior, repetitive behavior.
So obsessive means, you guys know what obsessive means?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compulsive, do you know what that word means? So compulsive is you can't control it. You just do it. So if you're obsessively, compulsively doing something, it's something
You can't control.
you cannot control it, but also you're so preoccupied with it.
From my experience, it's when it causes you to repeat something over and over again. There's lines on the floor. So every time I look down and I step on a line and it steps on a certain part of my foot, I have to make sure it steps on the other foot. It has to be in the same spot, same line, same everything. I avoid looking at the ground to cope with it.
And OCD is not being the cleanest person in the
It's-
whole entire world.
Yeah, OCD is not a perfectionist.
Yes, I think the idea of sex can make someone anxious. I think there can be anxiety around sexual contact and being very vulnerable with someone else. And so, especially if you haven't been sexually active, that's probably something that you could you might worry about now, of like, what is it gonna be like? Is it gonna hurt? Am I gonna get an STD? Am I gonna die? Can I have a baby? All of those things are questions that you might worry about. And my answer to you, if you are anxious about sex, educate yourself, especially in the state of Texas, especially in America, where women's reproductive health is literally being torn apart right now and being illegal, essentially. It's so important for you guys to educate yourselves about sex, about being healthy when it comes to sexual, reproductive, all of that stuff with your body and your, down there parts, because it's not something that we talk about in school, but it's like so important to your life and to you being a healthy, productive human being.
It's already recording.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Live healthy, live happy.
I said like, comment, subscribe.